most people see it as ways to foresee or foretell the future. The I Ching. You've been doing a lot of writing on that lately. How can you possibly foresee the future or the trends that lead to the future?
Okay, so those are actually different questions.
Are they?
Yeah, they're a combination of different questions. So the reason, if you're looking at the why, the reason that we can foresee the future is that time is not linear. And it's been something that's been understood at the esoteric level. So the adept level, or the high temple level,
okay,
or anything beyond the most basic levels of Taoism. That's been known for thousands of years. Like the initial premise starts off with the fact that time is not linear.
Okay.
And so that's the why of it. That's why it's perceivable, and if
that's
we
the mechanism.
That's the mechanism.
Okay.
And so what is the logical implication of time not being linear? Well, if time is not linear, it means that everything has already been done, and in the past and in the future and in the present, it already all simultaneously exists. That's why you can perceive the future. It's already there.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that's a big.
Interestingly
that's a big
enough, oh yeah, I suppose it is, isn't it? If you haven't spent decades, immersed in it, it can be quite of a punch. Shall we absorb it a little? Does that lead to other questions? But
well, okay. I guess I can see why why those questions were different. How come throwing pennies in this day and age, or bones or sticks or careful observation and the codification and applying those to the code of the I Ching, how does that get us in touch with this nonlinear existing future?
okay. So once again, we're going back to why. So let's drop into why from an actual fully active tradition, and that is the same mechanisms that can be used to determine the future can also be used to determine the past, can also be used to determine place, any one of those particular things. So there's tons of information which is actually being slowly and grudgingly translated into the West. Again, that's been known for a very long period of time. But so sure, which is time and place, is usually about an individual acting in coordination with time and place. It's one of the sage powers, so sagecraft. As a person spiritually develops, you can be simply in the right place at the right time at all times.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, like freakishly so. And as you develop, every individual has, let's say, tendencies that will grow increasingly strong. And then at the same time, like the baseline package of Taoist expertise. So you never know what your focal points are going to be. But sure is one of those possibilities, the manifestation of time and place. It's considered to be one of the highest of all arts of the sage. And
this is sort of like luck, being a lucky person.
That might be how an outside person interprets it.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. And but not an inside person. Luck would be, again, a different force. And so it's kind of like when you're, let's say, taking a science course in something, and we think of a thing as being one particular thing, but scientists have divided it into 4 or 5 major things.
But a regular person is going to go, wow, that was fortunate that I was, that I didn't get in that accident or whatever, that I got a phone call and it delayed me a little bit, and therefore I wasn't at that intersection at that point, or something along those lines. You might say, ooh, that was lucky. But you might say,
it was an alignment with time and place. Now, the alignment of time and place, that may seem, entirely unrelated to this conversation about the future, except you asked a question about the nature of the I Ching, which is, how does a random event represent the flow of the universe, or in other words, the flow of time and place?
Yeah, so, and that random event is throwing the coins.
Right, the random event would be the coins, pulling the sticks, burning the bones, whatever you would like, or you could just sit there and look and go, oh, this is obviously a shift to the blah, blah, blah.
Oh, wow, that's...
But the reason for that is that you are using an intermediary, a medium.
Yeah, right, something between the big Tao and you. Right,
to fulfill the role of time and place. So it is simply a way of you're creating an alignment through the object, and then through the object is creating an alignment to the Tao.
So a random event is going to be subject to the Tao no matter what, right?
Right.
So
all physics exists within the Tao.
So you are observing the outcome of that random event and going, hey, I have a...
But the event stopped being random as soon as you set out to use it as the medium.
Oh, it did? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, that's what sure is.
That's like Heisenberg stuff.
The reality is that, so if you have a person, if you have the sagecraft, they don't have a medium. They are simply in the right place at the right time when they choose to be. Interestingly enough, with enough potency, they can manipulate the right place and the right time. But
because they're tuned in.
Yeah.
They don't need the coins.
They don't need the coins. And so what happens is that when we are looking at telling the future, we're introducing an intermediary to help us with the alignment of the right place and right time, so we can see what's going on.
Yeah, it's a
largely to avoid our own biases. Our own biases. And
but then you're saying...
I do that with quote marks quite deliberately. So
because we affect the coin toss. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that there is a three-way interaction between the parts. And most people will need the medium in order to facilitate that interaction, because their control or interaction or alignment with time and place is not good enough to do it without the medium.
Right.
And that's not meant to be a denigration of skill set.
No,
it's
just
literally just a statement of the capacity of an individual to be aligned or not aligned.
Sure. So, I mean, if you don't know how to play tennis, you're not going to play tennis very well.
That is true.
But before you said that it's that it's not just observing a random event, because we could just do that right now, because everything is, what it is. We could make careful observations of anything and get that information, but we're using a tool with that intention, the tool being the coins or the sticks or whatever. And then you said that that tool is influenced by your intention. Is that right? Did I hear that right?
Yes. I would not use those words, but yes. You are acting in alignment with those three. You are one of the three objects
in that relationship.
Right. Your intention, in theory, was to align with the Tao and use the object as the intermediary of that alignment. So you're one of those three objects.
Yeah, okay. You're in the equation.
Yes.
You're not outside the equation.
That is correct. It's impossible to completely remove yourself from anything that you are observing, which is a fundamental core of Taoism.
In physics.
Well, I mean, it didn't used to be, but
At the quantum level.
at the object and subject dichotomy, then we enter into that whole conversation. So let's jump out of that. But let's say Taoism has always said that there is no way of separating the observer from the observed.
Okay.
That all we can attempt to do is refine the observer. And that is actually pretty much the entire function of the spiritual side of Taoist practice is refinement of the observer.
Now it's coming together. Because the better vision, well, the better you are at interpreting things, the better answers you will get, and the better in harmony you will be able to achieve. Does that make sense? Is that right?
Yes.
I'm gonna get it right one day.
Well, we're bumping into problems of language. You're trying to convey a series of experiences with words that were never meant to convey them.
It's because I'm talking to somebody else. You're talking to me and I'm talking to somebody else.
Yeah. Well, the reality is that Taoists have certain terms that mean certain things for
Yes.
actual in-depth practitioner.
Terms of science, terms of art problem, for sure.
Right. And so it becomes difficult to try to create things that are equivalent to that. Because if they were equivalent, one would have generated a new term. So, but
yes, but if you're describing a cell that only you have seen through the microscope, and you say it's a body with a cell membrane and cytoplasm and organelles inside, I'm going to say, oh, it's like a plastic bag with jelly inside.
Well, that is true. However, what a Taoist would actually say is, hey, why don't you look through the microscope? And then we would have an agreement on an experience and then be able to move from that position. So there are limitations of language, but I understand the medium we're working in right now.
Yes.
So
that's a very good point, is that how do I, as just a person, how do I get to look through the microscope so that I do know what you're talking about?
Well, you have the I Ching.
Tell us about the I Ching.
Well, all you need is the alignment with a medium, and then the I Ching works.
So the I Ching is how many figures and combinations, and what's the broken line and the whole long line mean?
Well, without a big set of scrolls hanging behind me and
in general,
and a lecture board, there are 64 hexagrams, which represent 64 phases of either action or circumstance. Usually can be both as we go through the process. So, and typically there's a series of moral advices which go with those interpretations, because there's a difference between the I Ching that is used for the common person. Mm-hmm. So a common individual that wants to know the future essentially has the same set of duplicate questions that are asked over and over again. And that is, how do I get rich? What is my health going to be like?
Oh, yeah.
And where do I find love? And those things are actually all better answered by the art of living than they are by the I Ching. And
so we're compelled to ask those questions.
Well, there is an underlying biological compulsion to ask those questions, but they're not hugely varied. However, the I Ching was not designed to simply stay at those levels. What the I Ching originally was a restricted access to either advanced Taoist practitioners or nobility or generals. And it was used, for example, in the general purposes, it can be used to predict the movements and outcomes of different operations.
Oh, that's why it's worded so weirdly like that.
Right. If in fact you're a general and you're looking at it, it's like, oh, breakthrough at blah, blah, blah. We can expect opposition here. This will be a path of ease in this direction should we choose to pursue it. And that requires, at that level, it requires an expert within the I Ching doing the tosses and then sitting down with the texts to examine the interactions of the pieces. You can't just pull that out of your head.
Yeah.
And there's too much at stake.
There's lots of complications, there's lots of variables.
Right. And so part of it,
it's not a fortune cookie.
When you see the change lines occur within it, those are forces which are in contest that could change and could cause a change within the outcome. However, if we move it down to, whether or not you're going to find love or have some money in your pocket, or if you're going to die of cancer tomorrow, we don't really need that spectrum of the I Ching. For advanced Taoist practitioners, it was actually used as part of the determination of whether you had an intrusion within reality, this reality, of gods or deity-like figures, whether or not there was a demon present, whether or not reality was fracturing. As back in the legendary era, one of the responsibilities of Taoists was actually to stabilize reality. So you can either believe or not believe that. I'm simply retelling the tales of it. And so
you need information from that realm.
The I Ching, again, is a tool of alignment. And in particular, if you suspect that you have been tainted, that you want a certain outcome, you put an intermediary into the position because they are not tainted. So it's kind of like you get a doctor to do an assessment, although you might think that you have this particular thing.
Yeah, it's an agent.
Right, you have an attorney come in to fight your legal battles.
Right.
All of those things because they have a certain measure of detachment.
It's a buffer, yeah.
Right, the I Ching has a certain measure of detachment. And you may also not know if you've been influenced or not influenced by any one of those forces.
Oh, yeah.
So you use the I Ching and you toss it out and it shows you events that you thought were random are in fact not random. Or at times, they are actually random. And so, meaning that they don't have a consequential pattern for you.
You just,
And so, those are like the old roots of the I Ching. That's back when, turtle shell was being burned and the cracks were coming out, and that had to do with yang injection of energy into the yin, et cetera, et cetera.
That makes so much sense, though, because it's so much more, the questions, the more complicated the question, maybe this is paradoxical, the better the I Ching addresses them. But we come to it with a very simple yes or no question, and it's like, dude, it's mostly in your hands, but here are the trends.
Okay, well, I've already given talks on this part before, so I'll talk briefly about it right now.
Okay.
Essentially, like at the low temples, and I'm not just referring to the temples, at the lower level of practice where you're essentially dealing with 3 questions done over and over again.
Yeah.
Where was I going to go with that? Oh yeah, you can just, you can get a toss and get an answer and go from there. But here's the thing, at that level, for the most part, there's usually the advice of, well, you shouldn't ask the same question repeatedly because you might offend the Tao.
Oh.
First of all,
wait, what?
You're not going to offend it. It's the statement that's made.
Okay.
So if you go in and put your payment down and get your Ching read, you will probably hear that statement. All that should happen is if you are asking the same question more than one time, are small variations in the responses. That should be it. And that's if it's done independently if it's done by the same person, because there are hexagrams which are just shades of each other.
Okay.
Now they're important at the higher level, but at the basic 3 questions, it doesn't matter. Like there are a number of hexagrams which are pretty much the same duplicate answer. If you're concerned about how you're going to move 20,000 troops from blah to blah, they're different answers.
Yeah, okay.
If you're concerned about whether this person likes you and you're going to end up running off together, they're the same answer.
Okay, yeah. A degree of nuance for the circumstance, yeah.
And so it should always produce the same result for you. There should be no exceptions to that.
Okay.
The reason that exceptions occur is that there is no skill in that area.
So the person throwing has to, or tossing, or observing, or interpreting, has to have a level of skill.
It's helpful if you have a third person, a priest that specializes in that area. Their skill can be great enough where it overrides your lack of skill, and will allow you to come up with consistencies in your approaches. If you are, and then many times the demonstration is to actually run the same thing repeatedly just to make sure, because if you've got the skills, you have no problem demonstrating them.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that's cool.
And, but again, this is a paid services transaction, and has been. It's a corruption of, nah, it's always been that way. Like the reason that they brought forward the oracle for the general or for the nobleman or for the priest, the reason that person showed up was he was getting paid, or she was getting paid a great deal, and usually with huge negative consequences, of course, if they were wrong. And so,
scary.
If you got the skills, you got the skills.
Well, yeah, I mean,
if you don't got the skills, you don't got the skills.
We pay a plumber, you know, for his experience and for not to mess up, right?
Yeah, and the plumbing job shouldn't be different each time.
Oh, that's true.
They come in to do it, so it should simply be a matter. No, that's how you snake a drain. So, you know, snake it.
Snake it.
And
all right. So the tossing of the coins or the whatever results in patterns. One of these 64 patterns that is interpreted, now we know, not as yes or no or good or bad, but as like the weather, kind of.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's not absolutely fixed in stone because there are so many interacting factors. But in general, the toss should be more than that. It should be more than a single thing. Again, this whole idea of the single thing, that's the lowest level.
Yeah.
And I'm not denigrating that, because people have their concerns.
Sure.
They want to know if they're going to have some money. They want to know if they're going to have some sort of emotional connection. They want to know if they're going to have, what's the other one? Health, how long they're going to live. So those are old stories. However,
yes, okay.
If we're scaling it up,
how can I use the I Ching appropriately?
Well, what you want to know is your circumstances, the intended action, and the likely outcomes.
Okay, circumstances, action, and outcome. That makes sense.
So CAO.
Oh, jeez.
CAO.
Where you are, what you can do, and what's going to happen if you do it.
Yes.
Right? That's the assumption, that if you do it.
Right, and you know, that can be tweaked. So circumstances, you want a clear view of the circumstances you're in. Action, you usually want to sit back and go, best action rather than likely action, because most humans will not necessarily choose the best action.
That's right.
They're going to choose the one which is most comfortable for them, which is the likely action.
Right.
And then you have the outcome, and outcomes are not fixed to one single point. Outcomes occupy a range. And so that range is determined by the hexagram, but it has different possibilities within it. And again, best versus likely, keep in mind something understood within the ancient era. The other person that you're opposed to likely had their own oracle as well, doing the same tosses as you. So in those circumstances, what you're dealing with is a chess match between the two people. And then if you're sitting there going, okay, well, this is my action within these particular circumstances, sometimes it's to oppose another person's action.
Right. What that guy's doing over there. But the world is not always a dichotomy of opposition.
That is true.
But it can be used that way.
Yes. There are elements within the I Ching which are there to deal with adversarial response. Meaning, we like to sit back and say, oh, my adversary is imposing this upon me. But the reality is, you could be the adversary.
Of your own self, or of the other guy.
The other person. Because they want something, and it may be in diametric opposition to you. Now, the I Ching could give you a piece of response, which is essentially, hey, don't directly oppose this person. They're going to crush you mercilessly.
Yeah.
However, your best approach is to be the second banana, to subjugate yourself to their whims.
You'll live longer.
Yeah, this will open a door for you. And so the queries in those areas can be, if you think of them as snapshots, they could be done as multiple snapshots.
Oh, yeah.
So you're piecing it together. But again, those are incredibly complex elements and not your usual casual tossing of the of the coin.
So if I'm not a general fighting a war with millions of lives on the line, is there an appropriate way to use the I Ching?
Well, if you're dealing with something that's modestly complex, I would move towards trying to get a picture of your circumstance and your best action, and then seeing what the outcome is.
Okay.
Because even with your best action, you may look at the outcome and go, you know what? It's not worth my best action.
Oh, well, that's a weird idea.
You know, it's like, okay, you're going to take your best shot, but this is what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And then you sit back and go, ugh, if that's the outcome of my best shot, you know what? I'm not going to take my best shot.
Maybe I can use that energy on something else.
Well, that's a reality of life. You only have so much you only have so much energy, and you may not get this thing that you have chosen to focus on as being a satisfactory outcome.
Yes, and we have to do that whether we use the I Ching or not, so maybe the I Ching gives us a little peek into what might be better.
The I Ching can be a very blunt peek at a lot of things, which is essentially like, you need to change the way you're thinking about this.
Oh, that's tough. That's tough love right there.
Yeah. Well, you know, as one of the responsibilities of the Taoist tools is actually to tell you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it, as it's not a social religion. And so social religions, or social in general before anything, generally means you're going to be lied to repeatedly in order to satisfy whatever drives you happen to have. Or
that the establishment has.
Right. With Taoism, if we take it to war fighting, you need a measure of truth, because otherwise you're dead, as are the people that relied upon you.
And your whole movement and your whole country and everything,
Yeah. And for a Taoist, entering into an area where reality is challenged, or they suspect the presence of demons or gods that can be revealed by the I Ching, again, horrific consequences if they're just being told what they want to hear.
Yes. You walk right into a trap.
Yeah, and
dangerous ground.
That's one of the possible interpretations of dangerous ground. So that's the spectrum of stuff we have to keep in mind.
Yes.
If really you're just concerned about the basic things, and I'm not saying that this is at all wrong. Every time I say this, people think I'm lecturing them that they should go on this epic quest of purity and refinement.
Super esoteric.
That is not Taoism, not by any measure of it. And if your Taoism is, I'm going to go for a walk and tie a red string around a tree and spend a few minutes in nature, that's perfectly fine. Huge umbrella for Taoism on there. However, we're also very frank for a lot of things, which is you should not suspect or equate tying the string around a tree with a person preparing for, blah, 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 blah. Those are different activities. One is not better than the other. They are different within the umbrella. And they require massively different quantities of power.
And tying a string around a tree comes after you have a place to live and food and...
Yeah, you have to take care of your basic needs. Taoism was meant to help humans. Even if you go to the most esoteric extremes, let's say, if you're dealing with the old roots, you're dealing with Taoists as protectors of humanity,
right?
Either protecting or trying to consolidate the reality, or protecting against predatory influences, or simply by presence, showing others that there is an alternative to the red dust, should they ever choose to walk down that path.
No pressure.
So that individual is going to go about living their lives no matter what you happen to do, and perhaps you should go about living your own life if your primary concerns are relationships, wealth, and health.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Fundamental.
Vast part of the human spectrum. Okay.